Throw your uppercut, try to hit me in the gut, thinking that I won't react. You whispering my name, thinking I won't be the same. Turn fiction into fact. See what you didn't know, bruises that I'll never show, slipping on your every jab. So tighten up your fist, step into the ring with this. I hope your mama's got your back. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, blowing the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a buzz. Oh, 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 oh. Just 'cause I took a break, you're making a huge mistake, thinking you can take the throne. Look at you trembling, step into the lion's den. Bet you wish you stayed at home. Begging for mercy underneath your breath when I ain't even sweating. Yeah, my legend's written in the stone, yeah. You're crying danger in defeat is now your only friend. Even your mama's gotta know. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round.
Hey Nick, Sean Spicer. I understand there's some controversy brewing about how many subscribers you have on YouTube. You have more subscribers than anybody. Then it's probably the biggest, largest YouTube subscription that anybody's had. But also it's not numbers that matter, Nick. And I know everyone's gonna quibble over this, but it's content, it's quality, and your subscribers are amazing. They're great. They're high quality subscribers, and that's really what you have to look at. Don't just focus on the numbers. I mean, if people are spewing a bunch of fake news, just don't get in the mud. They're amazing folks. Their engagement, the way that they like the videos. Anyway, I hope this puts this to the end. I hope that this controversy is over and we know who the real YouTube subscriber champ is, and it's you, Nick.
Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone, to In Time. Thank you for joining us. Oh, wow. Yeah, we're still still recovering. Oh, Xandering, how are you?
I'm actually doing really good right now.
Why is that? Why is that?
I've realized I'm a horrible, terrible person, and I'm okay with that.
Well, I could have told you were a horrible, terrible person.
I
didn't eat. Yes. well, okay. Do you want to explain why? Yeah.
I listened to. I've had this book for a while, and I listened to it once, quite a while ago, and I came across it, and I don't know why I was feeling. I think maybe it was because of that Home Free Sea Shanty song. Kind of got me in the mood for old timey sailing ship type. So I decided I'd drag out this book, and it's called "The Tragedy of the Whale Ship Essex." And of course, the events of the whale ship Essex, its sinking, because it sank, were the inspiration for the climactic scene in Moby Dick. So, it sunk in November of 1820. And it had a crew of 20 people. And the 20 people actually survived the sinking. It got rammed by a sperm whale down in the South Pacific. And initially, the 20 crew members all survived the ramming and the sinking of the Essex. By the time they were rescued, there were only 8 of them left alive. And shall we say that some of the cuisine ended up being rather objectionable to most people. So as I'm driving down the road listening to the tragedy and how these people lived and the things that they had to do and just the living conditions, it made me suddenly very grateful to be alive today, where I don't have to deal with any of those kinds of things. So, yeah, doing pretty good.
Yeah. We forget how bad we've had it. I got to tell you, I've been sort of feeling that way just watching Ukraine, because it's sort of like, okay, of course, then I feel guilty, and so I was like, okay, survivor's guilt. I'm not going through any of that, but that's the goal. Life has no meaning if you're not trying to improve the quality of life for people around you. So, and that includes, of course, I'm sorry. I am distracted. I'm exhausted too, so you'll have to forgive me. Well, all right. So it's what is it? The sinking of the tragedy of the Essex. Is that the title of the book?
Whale Ship Essex.
Whale Ship Essex.
The title is The Tragedy of the Whale Ship Essex, and the Essex was out of Nantucket, Massachusetts. So the fact they had to go all the way down to the South Pacific in order to go whale hunting. They were gone for quite a while, and conditions are pretty terrible. How quickly we forget, and of course this doesn't surprise me because of our lifespans, and we're such creatures of our own personal experiences. That how quickly we forget, that life really didn't start getting good for people until the 19th century, and it was pretty brutal before that. So for everybody, it's like whatever oppressed minorities out there, and they're like, we've had it so bad, and it's like, everybody had it bad until about the 20th century. We're slowly dragging ourselves out of the muck and the mud, and so I'm kind of happy to be alive now instead of in the 1800s, because that would really suck.
Yeah. So did you catch the Oscar? Yeah, I probably wouldn't have made it. But the average life expectancy was 32, 34, I think, up until about 100 years ago. And people point out that once you made it past the age of about 12, life expectancy actually got very close to what it is now. It still wasn't quite as high as it was now, but it's much closer. But the infant mortality rate was, I think, 30%. So that was a huge part of it. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, that's not my hometown. But I spent a lot of time growing up in Cohasset, which is just down the way from that class in Massachusetts. So I went to Nantucket all the time. Anyway, so Jesus, why is you'll have to forgive me. I'm going to be what is it? I think a little out of it for most of the stream. I apologize. So what the hell were we talking? Oh yeah, life expectancy. I mean, I'm 48, I think, sort of somewhere in that vicinity, and so the chances are over 50%. I wouldn't have made it to this age. Average life expectancy was 32 up until about 100 years ago. So we forget that.
Yeah, and things like giving birth was a very dangerous thing for women. So many women died in childbirth, and thankfully we've got that pretty much solved. I mean, it's rare for, at least in first world nations, for women to die giving birth. And I think one of the most impressive advancements we made was birth control.
Oh Jesus, yeah.
Pretty impressive what we've done in the 20th century.
Birth control, that revolutionized everything. So, all right, hold on a sec. So, I don't know if that was all right. So here's a question. Let's see. Did they die first, or did they just pick out the most tasty-looking survivor? I was wondering that question, and I didn't ask. I was just like, is that a rude kind of thing to ask, or is that How did they just pick the ones that died, or was there fights for them?
When you get to the end, and they were kind of recounting the tales, of course the people died first. You see this with the plane crash in the Andes. You see this with the reports of what happened to the Donner Party in California. So after the fact, it's like everybody died before they were consumed. But I question whether that actually happened, because starving people can do some really irrational things. So I'm not entirely sure whether everybody was actually dead before they got knocked off and eaten, or if they were just mostly dead.
Just mostly dead. Well, then we got another one, and we are getting a slight echo from you, and I think I know what that is, so I'm going to go. I'll go deal with that in a second. But let's see, what was the other one? Somebody said. This takes on new meaning. In time, I know when I'm being buttered up. That given the conversation, that takes on just a whole new level of a meaning. And Titan giving his usual his usual helpful contribution. I'll put that up in a sec here. Oh dear Lord. Yeah, thank you, Titan. All right, let me go deal with the audio there. It's like all the audio settings got reset. The mic blew. The whole. It's been. I think God doesn't want me to stream. All right, I may do it, but I may not be able to hear you. Which I was not saying is a deal breaker, but.
In my presence that everything I say has to be said twice, just so that you make sure you get the point.
Oh, okay. All right. There we go. That'll butter it up. Yeah. All right. Yeah, we got it. We got a little bit of I think we got. Well, hopefully we got that taken care of. You guys can let us know. So, let's see. What was the Oh, good. I mean, it's an interesting thing. I was opining on this earlier. We're the most adaptable species on the planet. That's why we are where we are. But it's like a blessing and a curse, because we forget how lucky we have it, which is good. If we didn't forget how lucky we had it, we wouldn't strive to improve things. The reason we've improved things is because we forget how good things already are, and we sit there and say, "I bet you they can be better." It's like MIT problem. They get so bored over there. And we're just like, okay, what's the highest temperature that you can actually cook a steak at before it incinerates? It's like that's the kind of questions that somebody's asking at MIT, and they sit there and try to just mess with what we can do, and the amount of stuff they learn just from messing with stuff. But people forget how good we have it, and that ends up being both a blessing and a curse. But if pain wasn't relative, if suffering wasn't relative on some level, nobody gets to have a bad day after the Holocaust. But in reality, we all
that's true.
Suffer. Yeah. But good. I'm glad.
Yeah, I'm glad you decide you're going to go. Oh, the next time you get to go across the country for any reason, or just even travel to the next state over, or whatever it is, you don't get to complain about anything that happens on that trip, because just take a look at what people went through on the Oregon Trail.
Yeah, or I don't know. Yeah, so it's interesting, because I get it. The whole Ukraine thing. I was listening to President Sunday, who I've been following. I love watching his streams there. They are high end. They are high end, man. He's over my head most of the time. But I was watching, and he was talking about. He's like, well, what he was talking about some. A little bit of internet drama, and it's just like, it's these people don't realize and don't remember that there's a war going on. And I was like, yeah, there is. And there's almost always a war going on somewhere. So, we all forget that most of the time. But this one's not insignificant. It's just realizing, I don't know how you say that without it sounding bad, but at any rate, I mean, and it's just amazing how many people are not plugged into what's going on there, especially since it continually escalates. The good news is the rate of escalation has dramatically dropped off, but it's still escalating, and the U.S. is still crossing lines that Putin said would be World War III if we did. Now, I don't think he wants to do World War III, but, there's still brinksmanship going on, and there's still, we had a report, what was it? Oh, dear Lord, now I can't even remember the, was it Denmark? Let me look that up. I gotta look up, because we'd gotten a report of a country that was, actually preparing bomb shelters, and, it was in advance of, or let me rephrase that. It wasn't, they weren't, it was Denmark. Denmark, the government of Denmark has issued a decree. They've been trying to keep it on the down low, that all local bomb shelters and facilities now need to be tested and modernized and updated, and they're trying to get everybody out there to do that. And there's a reason they're thinking about it now, and it wasn't this huge urgent thing that, like, oh my God, we're going to get bombed tomorrow, but they're thinking about it, and some of those shelters haven't been some of those shelters were actually built by the Germans when they occupied. So some of the bunkers are Nazi bunkers in Denmark, but at any rate, they're preparing them on the off chance they need to use them. It's they're being proactive, but it's I said it before. If you're not, you shouldn't be worried, but you should be concerned. If that makes any sense, we should be staying on top of it. This is not an insignificant thing that's going on here. But so much of it's changing. Pope put in Blazing Wizard Pope, who was in the live chat a moment ago, put a whole bunch of really great. There's a Sky News commentator who I think really has his head around it, and he's been saying a lot of the stuff that I've been sort of thinking and wondering, am I the only one who was sort of seeing it this way? He's been saying a lot of stuff. I was like, okay, he's, one of the things he had said too was Zelensky's not interested in negotiating, and that thought had crossed my mind. Is he, when this is what Commander Macmillan had said, this is what you had followed up on, and you've been sort of hammering home, when you're really interested in negotiating, you're interested in negotiating, but Zelensky isn't going to give up any of this land. He's not interested in negotiating. He's interested in going back to where things were before this war started. That's not a negotiation. That's a victory. And I said, yeah, Zelensky has victory, has negotiating his starting positions when he knows will never be accepted. But the reason is because actually they're winning. As long as they keep winning, he can ask for anything he wants. So, anyways, it's on our Discord. Blazing Wizard Pope has been there's Blazing Wizard Pope. Blazing Wizard Pope's been putting all this stuff from Sky News, and I was thrilled because Sky News, the host was just like, and we're going to bring up this infographic now. Oh no. We don't have the infographic. Sorry, technical difficulties. We're not going to bring up the infographic. I was like, yeah, see, in time's not the only one. Oh, dear Lord. But anyways, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. My thoughts is they got a hell of a crew working to try and make sure that their news network runs smoothly, and they still run into hiccups. And you're sitting there behind something that looks like off of a battleship of the year 3022 instead of 2022. Trying to make everything run, and I'm just like, I'm so glad it's you, and I can just show up with a phone and a audio Bluetooth for making calls, and whenever there's a problem, it's on your end. My setup's really, really simple, and there's not a whole lot to go wrong. I have one setting and one setting only, so if something's not working, it's your fault.
Unfortunately, that's usually true. Yep. Well, and I showed you the back. The back of this is so monitor, computer, and all working together to make the show. Maybe a touch over engineered. We'll see. But let's see.
You got to do at some point. You've got to do a behind the scenes So, like you can actually set up the camera so that everybody sees what you're looking at while you're doing the screen and the kinds of things that you're trying to do. Like you'll seem a little bit distracted or like you're missing something. And it's, usually because you're trying to do something off on this screen over here at the same time you're trying to talk. And, of course, people don't multitask very well at all. Well, most people don't. There's a very, very small percentage, some like 3% of the population that can actually multitask, like talk to you while they're doing something. Usually there's a degradation. Sometimes you can have enough unconscious competence at doing something that you don't really have to think about doing it anymore. Like I can talk on the phone and drive my truck at the same time. But if I'm looking for an address or trying to negotiate through traffic, you'll very quickly find that I really can't hold up the conversation. So people should be able to see how you have things set up. I mean, you got a beautiful background back there. They should really do like
see what I'm looking at,
so people can see what goes into trying to make this.
We did have a video on that for the patrons, and they were they could go and see everything. Oh dear Lord, okay. Thank you. All right,
there you go again.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, I get distracted. Yeah, you've got an echo, and I'm honestly, I've got no idea why. Something very weird is happening with the sound here, and everything here seems to be showing everything's going fine, but you're getting an echo, and I've got absolutely no clue why. One thing I suppose I can
every once in a while I can kind of hear it. Like it's almost like I'm getting my audio back from your microphone is what it sounds like to me. Of course, I'm not saying that's what it is. That's just kind of because it's so faint and it's not consistent. So at least on my end, from what I can hear, I can completely ignore it, but apparently somebody can hear it.
Yeah. I just realized. I wonder if that's an interesting thought. So yeah, we've got like 5 sound buses and the whole 9 yards. But I'm wondering now if let's see here. Oh, yeah, and then I've always got the Discord open.
What's that? Wait, what's that wire over there to your right? What's that?
Hey. Better watch it while I'm trying to, sounds like a mic picking up a speaker. Well, it won't be after I unplug this thing, and we'll see what that does.
That's good.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. I could just, so here's an interesting question. Oh, I have a theory. I have an interesting theory on this. All right.
That's actually a song from the Buffy episode, Once More with Feeling, the musical.
Yeah, that's right.
It could be demons.
Yep. You're a huge Buffy fan. I forgot. No, I've never actually watched Buffy.
I wouldn't say I'm a huge Buffy fan. I watched the whole thing and I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan. Although that is my favorite episode of the entire series is Once More with Feeling. I thought they did a brilliant job on that episode.
All right, I'm gonna try one more. Can you give me a mic check one more time here? Oh, I've already tried this. This doesn't work. I have no idea why. Yeah, why don't you just give me a mic check and we'll see if I can hear you. This whole system got screwed up. Well, we're down for a week. Look what happens. Oh, you there?
That's what happens when you unplug this random wire.
You son of a.
I told you I was in a good mood today because I got to listen about how 12 people perished badly.
All right.
Of my life today.
All right, somebody let me know if this is if that's sounding any better. I'm gonna have to go through and fix the whole sound. So my mic went out. I managed to get that fixed, but yeah, it's just now the whole soundboard is down. It's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So yeah, okay. For a minute, nobody heard his Andering for a minute. He was just fucking with me though, asshole. What was I gonna say?
Well, the question is, can they hear me now?
Yeah, that's okay. If you let's see if they can. Buffy's pretty. You know what? I've never seen it. I was when Buffy was out there. I was ostracized for not watching Buffy. I was, it was yeah, that was a thing. And all my writer friends were writing short stories that were either fan fiction or just somehow there was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but it was a Christmas story, and Buffy was taking over for Santa Claus, so it was Buffy the Vampire Slayer because she was. Yeah, I was like, okay, oh yeah, that's very cute. Yeah. Oh dear Lord. Well, it looks like I figured out the sound thing. Yeah, I'll at some point. We'll set up so that they can see the whole. That's what I've heard. And what's her name was in it?
I thought they touched on some really good topics.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like as you get older, you kind of look back at some of these characters and you kind of realize how some of the characters weren't such good people. It's like Xander, for example. Anybody who's watched the series knows who Xander is. And it's like you kind of get to the end of that thing and you're like, you're not really all that great of a person. I mean, you did some cool things. You had some cool insights. And then you kind of screwed it all up at the end when you walked away from Anya in the middle of the altar. So you're
you just spoiled it. You just spoiled it. No. So this is for those of you who don't
forget about it by the time you get to it.
Forget about what? For those of you who don't know, yeah. So is Andering and there is a really huge lag, and we didn't used to have that either. I got to figure out where that's coming. Something's up with the whole. We'll get it sorted. So one day, is Andering is the shield is down. We go and the shield we just put down so if somebody's off screen, whatever, we don't just have a blank camera. We got the shield that comes down over it. And I raised the shield, and he's sitting there with his AR-15, and he's stroking it. He's just like, with his AR-15. And I was just like, what the fuck are you doing this? Well, this is what you liberals always think we're doing with our AR-15s, don't you? It's like, what, fair. So anyways, I was stroking my blunderbuss, which there you go. Got that in grease, and let's see, aimed it right at the camera, and then I got a huge earful from his Andering. Thanks for that. Apparently, I can't aim my blunderbuss right at the camera.
On the trigger.
Put my finger on the trigger. That's true. Well, it's missing the flint. It hasn't been packed. It's a blunderbuss, for fuck's sake. Oh dear Lord! And here I am. I'm all for gun control.
Firearms as though they are loaded. Never pointed at anything you are not prepared to destroy. Never put your finger on the trigger.
I was aiming it at you, wasn't I? Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh boy. Yeah. So
I could just see it now. The news headline: Anti-gun left-winger kills Second Amendment supporter with blunderbuss because of ignorance of the fundamentals of gun safety.
There's something very poetic about that. I think you may have your objections to it, but I don't know. I think that's pretty. Call that karma. Oh dear Lord, we picked that up. I picked that up on my honeymoon. My wife and I had our honeymoon in Greece, and I saw that and I really wanted to get it. And my wife was like, "Oh, we've gotten so many things, we really have to get that." And I didn't understand what her objection was, but finally I realized her objection was we're going to have to go through Heathrow with it. And Heathrow, they don't fuck around. that's she's just like, okay, we're gonna be at Heathrow and they're gonna find that, and it's like, okay, it's gonna be the full body cavity search, so we're gonna be strip searched and the whole 9 yards. It's gonna dramatically change the dynamic of our honeymoon, but yeah, no, we got through security just fine. It was funny too because in Greece, you have to tell them that you have it in your bag. You pack it and you tell them. I told him in Greece, and the guy was pissed. He was just like, "Why are you telling me?" It's just like, "Well, you're supposed to know." I was like, "Yeah, whatever." It's just like, wow, security in Greece is not what I would have hoped. They got to London. I said, "Okay, there's a old-fashioned blunderbuss in the thing. It can't even be fired." And a guy just takes one step back and says, "Okay, sir, I need you to put your hands where I can see them." I was like, "Oh shit!" Just put my hands there. He goes, "Okay, we're going to call security over." Security comes over. They've got what is M14s or whatever the hell the thing is, and they're like, "Okay, we'd like you to go through your bag and find it for us, please." I said, "Sure, I can do that." My wife is having palpitations. Got through this fine. But and I listen. I have to give the British credit, and I think this is important. This is it's worth noting. The full body cavity search was very professional. It was almost delightful, quite frankly. They wondering how far I want to take this joke. Like probably not as far as I could. But yeah, it's just if you're going to get a full body cavity search, I think the Brits are the ones to do it. You don't want, and I don't want to sound racist or anything, but it's like I had one in Germany too, and I greatly preferred the British one. But that's if anybody listen, in the live chat, just let us know if which is your favorite nation, police or military force to give full body cavity searches, and we'll take a poll. But.
And we're demonetized. Please don't forget to support the channel, because Nick opens his mouth and suddenly we're demonetized. So
yeah,
really helps.
Yeah, well, yeah, well, we're demonetized for at least 50% of our shows, dude. It's yep, and then I open my mouth for the other 50. So. It's good to be back.
Better be so appreciative that I settled for, or that I agreed to your proposed salary. I mean, because if you actually paid me something, I'd probably feel guilty about my performance on the show.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is if you were being paid like in real dollars instead of Monopoly money, would actually have to have standards, and it was just like I don't want to go down that road. Do we ever get to an actual rundown? This isn't this is in time. This isn't overtime. Yeah.
I was going to say, he's got his streams wrong. You put up all three of the ones for this week, so I think he was confused on which one he's watching. That one's tomorrow.
Yeah, well, that one I did accidentally put that up for today, so that one and in time was scheduled for today. No, we're going to do a rundown tomorrow, and there's a lot to cover. I did kind of a half rundown last night. The Will Smith thing, it's good to see public opinion starting to turn on that, but that is one I really did want to talk about, because I've been on Twitter, and the number of people who said, well, good on Will Smith and good for him for doing that, and, you run your fucking mouth, look what happens. And I'm sitting there going like, his handling is paid in rubles. I was going to say that would be a what is it? That would be a raise, but probably not right now. So no, the number of people who said, good on him for doing that, and I'm sitting there going like, first of all, I don't know whether or not Chris Rock knew that his wife had that medical condition. I don't know if Chris Rock knew that, and if he didn't, okay, so I got smacked in the face for telling a joke that he didn't realize. He wasn't joking about her medical condition. He was joking, about her hair, which may have been cut short for a movie. He's got no way of knowing. So if he didn't know, he's getting smacked for saying something that he, joke would on its face seem reasonably appropriate. And, bless be Jesus. And, maybe not a great joke, but still, you can't just go around smacking everybody who says something offensive to you. You can, but, there's a whole bunch of points I had to that. One of them being is, okay, so Chris Rock didn't understand why he's getting hit. So, what? So he decides to retaliate because, hey, you smack somebody, you better watch out what, the escalation that comes back your way. And I'm just saying, going, this is not, I don't know, this really bugged me. What do you think? I realize now what I got to do is I got to ask. I got to do more asking you what you think and then cutting you off, and then just telling my opinion.
Any standard Tuesday?
Yeah, we call that Tuesday. Exactly. Well, the problem is you're like an independent thinker. You have your own opinions, and that really just kind of sucks. It's sort of like, why can't your opinion just be, well, gee, Nick, whatever you say is just solid gold, man. That's why I'm here. But okay.
Yeah, but that's why you pay me the big bucks.
Exactly.
You didn't want just a mindless drone, and you had to shell out some serious rubles to get me.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. All right, so your thoughts on the Chris Rock and there's some great memes that Titan put in the but anyway. So what were your thoughts?
My thoughts are, violence shouldn't be the first response. It should be a last response, and only in the case of serious injury or death. There's a couple of things I guess you can think about. It's like maybe you should be careful about making fun of people or making a joke about somebody when you don't know the circumstances behind why they are the way they are. Like you said, he might have been ignorant of the fact that she had alopecia and she shaved her head because of that. It's like, yeah, but that's not an excuse. I mean, because you didn't know what was going on and decided to make a joke about it. Well, it could have been a very hurtful thing to do. It could have been a serious situation. I mean, alopecia. My wife had a bout with some alopecia, and it's not fun. I mean, it can. Your hair just starts falling out for no apparent reason. And you'll get these big bald spots, and it freaked my wife out, and she was very self-conscious about it. So I think that you should be, cognizant that when you're trying to make jokes about people, they are people and they can be very hurtful. So maybe keep that in mind.
But does he make any jokes about anything other than people? I mean, he's always making jokes about people, really. I was thinking about, okay, what could you do that would be a safe joke? And it's like, well, if you make fun of their accent, if you make fun of the way they walk, if you make fun about anything about somebody, there's a chance that it's a serious condition and you weren't aware, right? Am I missing something?
Oh, no, yeah, it could be. I'm not saying that you should never make jokes about people, but you should probably maybe ask them if they care before, especially when you're going on something like the Oscars. And sometimes, people joke about people's actions. I mean, I think that's pretty fair game because they were your actions. But when you're talking about, making fun of somebody for having a shaved head or making fun of somebody because of their, things that they don't really control too much. It's like, you don't know why. You should probably be a little cognizant of that. And I don't know, we've gotten pretty sensitive about things too. And sometimes, jokes are just that, jokes, and you need to, buck up and just realize that they're jokes. And a lot of them are quite funny.
I mean, yeah. So first of all, I thought that was an off-the-cuff thing. Yeah, exactly. You're what was the joke? You wanted more ways than Dennis. Yeah.
But on the other hand, I'm going to start cutting hands off. So there will be no more on the other hand.
Wow. Okay, that got dark pretty quick. Welcome to In Time, folks. So you see, my concern is, even if you're making fun of their actions, you never know. Somebody's going to sit there. I mean, frankly, I think I could see next year, if Chris Rock is hosting, he's going to be making a whole bunch of jokes about getting slapped in the face, right? But at the time, it was a pretty serious thing. And so it's sort of like, I think anytime there's an old saying, comedy is tragedy from the other side of the street. Unless you're making fun of yourself, you're always really risking offending someone, and you're risking, and there's no way to always, and he's up there, he's got to fill time, he's got to try to keep things going, and it struck me as something that he'd said off the cuff, and you got to be careful because you never know. But on the flip side, responding with violence is something needs to be said. So I'm gonna split the baby, but slightly differently. I very much. I don't like that whole, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Words hurt people. Words hurt people all the time. And, people who are bullied with just words, not physical violence, but just words, and on social media have gone out and committed suicide. That cheerleader, was driven to suicide by the mom of another cheerleader pretending to be a student, and who was deliberately just being utterly cruel. And as an aside, I've been told many times that men are far more cruel than women, and you see a bunch of men around a dragonfly tearing its wings off, and it's hard to imagine any women being that cruel. But the reality is, oh boy, can they be that cruel? They just do it differently. They just have a different means of expressing that cruelty. Yeah.
Warning. Warning. Very broad statements.
Okay. I have a feeling we're about to go way off topic, but yeah.
Men generally deal with negative emotions through at least the threat of physical violence. That option is, for almost all of human history, not available to women, and so women developed reputation destruction and backbiting and rumor and innuendo to deal with aggression. So men tend to be physically aggressive, and women tend to, be manipulative. So, again, broad, sweeping statements.
Well, it's
amazing because it gets it to your. It's like with a man, it's like, well, maybe he'll punch you in the face and then the argument's done. But a woman may go out of her way to try and destroy your reputation in social circles. And because we're a social species, we evolved, being ostracized from the group pretty much meant death, and it was certainly the death of your genes. So that was a very, very negative, you might as well have died. So yeah, we evolve different ways, and we care about what the group thinks of us, because if the group thinks negatively about us, well, that threatens our life from an evolutionary point of view. So we've now expanded our horizons, and we're no longer quite so tribal, though we still have all of these tribal impulses that we have to deal with. So yeah, getting your reputation destroyed, or a bunch of people, saying horrible things about you, that's tantamount to threatening death on our lizard brain portion of our brains. So yeah, it can be a very serious thing, and we need to be cognizant of that. And also, people talk about, let's say, going back to the 1800s, back when life was brutal and often short. If you offended, or if you made a joke about another man's wife, you might get a freaking knife to the gut, not just a slap across the face. And people will point out, well, it's like, well, society was quite a lot more polite back then, but also brutish and short. And
I'm gonna step in on.
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, I don't think he was trying to say that. So Casey, women invented it. Seems like you pulled that out of your ass. I don't think he was saying that women invented it. I'm going to speak for him for a minute and then invite him to speak, and then I'll cut him off as he tries. But I think what he's suggesting is that men have always had the ability to resort to violence much easier than women have, and that means either you're going to get completely run over, or you're going to develop other ways. And men who are in situations where they can't express themselves physically for whatever reason find other ways to exert power. Women can exert power, they just can't or historically have been unable to exert it as effectively as men can. So they found other ways to do it. That's the Greek expression, I think it was. The man is the head of the body, but the woman is the neck and can turn the head any way she wants. And I think there's a decent amount of truth to that. And there's been a number of studies that have found that women have traditionally not had power in any way the same way that men have, but have had it, and they've just expressed it in very different ways that account for the fact that if a man decides to kill you, you're going to have a really big problem. But women
it
can
comes down to conflict. Yeah, it comes down to conflict resolution. Generally, like this. You have to remember the whole scope of human history and how we evolved to where we are. Throughout human history, men were far, physically dominant. Women couldn't fight against men and win. So that was not a viable option to deal with conflict or aggression for women. So they had to develop a different way because women still get aggressive. Women still have conflict as well. So they had to develop a different way of being able to express it. So men would just beat each other to a pulp, and whoever won, that was the end of the conflict. And well, women can't really do that. So, especially not with other men. And things are. I think that some of the problems that we run into today are brought about because of evolutionary pressures that made men and women have different roles, and we've gotten to the point where we don't need any of those roles anymore. And yet our lizard brains still have those things programmed in our own DNA. So we start running into issues. Leftover things that we can't just get rid of because evolution put it there.
Well, that gets back to the smack, which, the number of people who have said it's okay. And so my first question is, well, okay, if it had been a woman hitting a man, would that have been better or worse? If it had been a man hitting a woman, would that have been better or worse? And the general consensus, when people don't want to say it, is, well, it was a man hitting a man, so it's okay. And it's like, I'm not sure why that's the case. But the other thing is, okay, it's an escalation. Right, because it was just words, and one of the points that I want to make crystal clear is words can absolutely hurt people, and somebody who knows what they're doing with words. Again, the mother who got the cheerleader, and I don't think she was trying to get her to commit suicide, but she got her to commit suicide. She was bullying her so much online, and we've seen a lot of that, and. So I don't want to sit there and say that words are, you should never get angry at words and you should never lash out because of words. Oh, bullshit. Of course you can and even should get angry about it. But it's an escalation to react with physical violence. And physical violence isn't tolerated in our society. And that kind of bullying is quickly heading out the door, too, as we become aware of just how bad it is. Social media it has been really good at educating us on how nasty we can be, especially when we're anonymous and we're using a pseudonym instead of our real names, men or women. It doesn't matter. So I don't want to be dismissive of it, but on the flip side, it's an escalation to use violence. Chris Rock maybe did not know, and the reality is, unless you're going to say nobody's allowed to tell jokes or bad jokes, then. How was he going to know? Maybe he knew, maybe he didn't, maybe he forgot he's in the middle of the Oscars. It's one of the biggest gigs you can do as a comedian. He's trying to come up with something funny, came up with something funny, didn't realize there was a medical condition, or forgot for a split second. Never happened to you, happens to me. And then, it gets slapped. And so here's the question. If he didn't know, what's his response? Because if Will Smith just comes up and smacks you, well, what if he had been armed? Maybe not a gun, maybe brass knuckles, I don't know. But then he decided he's going to retaliate and he's going to escalate. And somebody on Twitter said, well, you shouldn't, if somebody hits you, you don't escalate with brass knuckles. Well, if you tell a joke, I don't think you escalate with physical violence. We've already ceded that escalation is perfectly fine. If you've been wronged,
that magnitude.
Yes,
yes. He told a joke, and there was like no discussion, no nothing. He kind of walked up there and smacked him. I mean, that was a huge jump in escalation. And at that point, you talk about, well, what is Chris Rock going to do to escalate? And it's like, well, he may be genuinely he's being attacked, and granted, it was a slap, but he doesn't know that something else is coming. It's like he might legitimately think I need to defend myself. So yeah, I mean, it's like you need to be very careful about the use of violence, especially when you go straight to the use of violence. That shouldn't be okay.
It's not. I've been wondering, okay, if I was in Chris Rock's position, what would I do? And I said, I'd probably say, look, you know, we all have our bad days, and Will Smith is a great actor. It was a professional thing. He acted absolutely out of line, but I'm okay. He's okay. I'd sit there and say, listen, I'm not going to press charges, and I'm going to ask the Academy to just sort of look the other way. But I just realized you can't really do that. The reason you can't do that is because he shouldn't get off just because he's a great guy and all this other. And his apology I thought was great, because his apology was an acknowledgement of why it's a problem. Because he just sat there and said, violence is toxic. We can't tolerate it. I was like, yeah. So he gets it. So I'm glad he gets it. But that's also why you can't sit there, because he did this on national television. There are people who look up to him. And, they see him do this. There's a reason it's unacceptable. You're not allowed to cross that line. As soon as you cross that line, Chris Rock is allowed to defend himself. And somebody said here in the live chat about dueling with pistols. And I was just like, yeah, there was a time when we did that. Ask Alexander Hamilton how well that went. When somebody insults you, you stay at the words, you stay at the insults. And if in a battle of wits you're coming an unarmed person, okay, then my condolences, and I'm sorry, and that's no fun. And maybe you can beat the living shit out of them. But society is a lot better with the fact that that's a line you're not allowed to cross. And he absolutely crossed it. You can't change that, and you can't change. So I lost a huge amount of respect for him, and I watched Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and I watched it as a guy who was acting at the time. So I watched it as an actor saying, holy shit, he can rap, he can, he was an amazing actor. He's got incredible range. He's hilarious, great timing. He's this whole package. And, here he is. He goes up and he slaps somebody. I haven't been that disappointed in someone in a very long time. And he redeemed himself about 85 or 90% with that apology that he did. It was yesterday, because he apologized then to the Academy, like, sorry, I didn't mean to disrespect you guys. And then he apologized to Chris Rock. I was like, okay, and he gets it. So, and I get that everybody has off days and everybody does shit they profoundly regret. It doesn't mean you don't get the consequences, but he got most of that respect back, and I'm glad to see it.
And I think that it's important too to remember and to show, not just to remember, but also to show, that actions have consequences. How quickly we forget that our actions have consequences. So people need to think about their actions before they decide to act upon them. In most cases, I mean, obviously, if there's a burning building with a child in it and you have a clear line to get the child out, maybe you shouldn't think about it for 20 minutes while the house burns down around the kid. But for the most part, you should probably think through the actions if it's not a life-threatening situation. And if you don't and you act poorly, that there are consequences, and people need to know that and see that happens, especially to those that we venerate.
So somebody, I think it was a case. No, somebody had been talking about how many people have been defending Will Smith, and there's no set of circumstances. I like him, and I'm listen, again, BA in philosophy, and my father was a lawyer. I've learned how to defend positions that I don't agree with, but I've had a very hard time coming up with a rational defense that I can sit there and say that was even close to okay. That was stunning, and that was extremely unfortunate, and that absolutely can't be tolerated. And it's amazing how many people on Twitter have been sitting there saying, like, well, you mouth off to someone, that's what can happen. Yeah, that is what can happen, and if somebody does that, they should go to jail, because that's not what's supposed to be allowed to happen. And there's a very good reason, because the next thing is, yeah, you're dueling with pistols, and I'm glad that era is gone. And God willing, it'll be gone for a very good long time. But this it gets back to actually one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up is because it gets back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show, which is the civilization. What happens when civilization starts to break down, either because you're on a whaling ship and you're out of food, or because it breaks down because you're in a war zone, and it's god awful, and human life expectancy drops to 30s if you're lucky, and it's a really horrible, shitty life the entire time. The only thing that the difference between that and where we are today is law. That's it. That's it. My father used to tell me all the time. He said, "Law isn't about justice," and I kept saying he must be saying that for some, you know. Because he said, no, most lawyers will tell you law has nothing to do with justice. It has to do with stopping violence. It's the only thing that keeps people from murdering each other. And when we murdered each other, and it was just whoever's, at the top of the pack who makes the rules and kills whoever they want until somebody kills and takes them out. It's like that was the Hobbesian state of nature. Life is cold, nasty, brutish, and short. And the difference between that and where we are now starts with, are you allowed to slap somebody on national television because they told a joke that they may not even have understood the import of that joke? No. He way the fuck out of line, and I'm so disappointed at the number of people who've been defending him. Really disappointed. And this is a guy I have worshipped him. I've seen every movie he's. And like I said, he I think he gets it. I think he absolutely gets it, because he did an apology that basically was along those lines. And he said it was inexcusable. And he said, there's no justification for it. And I was like, yeah, okay, he gets it. Oh, so good. Yeah, I don't know. It's amazing how many people are still defending it. And I was on Twitter. I don't normally, I try to be polite as often as possible. It's like it's not incels, but people who are having Will Smith act as a surrogate cock so they can talk about how big they are and go around, oh, he did what he should have done. Well, first of all, how many people have you smacked? It's usually the people who don't have much experience with violence who talk about how it's okay to be violent, and the first ones are going to be sitting there crying, "Don't throw me in jail," if they get busted for anything like an act of violence. It's going to throw their asses in jail. But yeah, sorry, what?
Capitol.
Yeah, bingo.
We're storming the Capitol.
Yep.
Yeah,
and it's just
one of the things that irritates me about a lot of people on my side, the more conservative side, because there are definitely people out there that you call amosexuals, or they really kind of glorify that whole violence life. I have my gun because I'm, if the government turns tyrannical, I'm going to be right out there with the rest of my militiamen, and we're going to. It's like that should be an absolute fear, dread. You should dread if that ever were to come to happen, because it is not pretty. We tend to romanticize the past as well. And we remember the best of things and tend to tune out those things that sucked. So we have a tendency to look upon the past with rose-colored glasses and realize that it's like, well, that's kind of what's wrong with today. Why people are so rude and don't care about other people anymore is, that we don't have a polite society anymore, because, you can't just get popped in the face if you mouth off to somebody. And it's like, yeah, but that's kind of how civilization advances, and having the tenet that it's okay to go from, telling a joke immediately to responding with violence does not bode well for the civilization if that becomes widely accepted. I mean, there's a reason that we've moved away from that. There's a reason we don't have dueling anymore, so we need to. And
they're good reasons.
Need to bear that in mind.
Yeah, somebody had pointed out, and I think Nate, the lawyer who's been a longtime supporter of this show, and he did a video pointing out, and I think this is true because I noticed this too when we showed the clip last night, and at first he was laughing. He was laughing at first. Now, there's no way to tell if he was just laughing or it's like, somebody tells a joke about you. Sometimes, I like to think I have a sense of humor about myself in most areas. Some areas I really don't. So I'm not going to pretend like every joke about me I'm a good sport about. But I think I am about at least half of it. But on occasions where I am, I laugh, and I'm sitting there going, "Okay, that was really funny because I fucked up because I'm going to pull this plug and we'll see what happens," kind of thing. But which you're still not allowed to discuss. Then that's in the contract, and that's what you're getting paid for. But that notwithstanding, the times when it really does hit a sore spot, you still laugh, right? So there's no way to know if that laugh was genuine or not. But he was laughing, which means he wasn't acting violent. The violence wasn't his first consideration. When he took a look at his wife, who didn't appreciate the fact that he was laughing at it, that's when he got pissed. Yeah. It was we probably spent too much time on it, but that was yeah. I don't know. That was my observation.
Yeah, I saw all the video clips I saw of it were after he had gotten up. So it's like I didn't even hear the joke that he said, because the video clips just cut straight up to him, walking up to him and smacking him. And I've got it's like, imagine you're Chris Rock in that instance. I mean, you're on national television doing like one of the most important shows, or at least most well-known shows on television. And you tell a joke, and at first it seems it's okay, and then somebody gets up out of the audience, walks up to you and smacks you across the face and doesn't say a word to you before he does it. And I mean, you can see kind of just the shock, like, I just got freaking smacked by Will Smith. What the hell is going on? I mean, he didn't say that, but it's like that's got to be going through his head. Like, I don't even know what to do. It's like, talk about shut down your OODA loop.
So
that's a great example of what happens when you interrupt somebody's OODA loop.
Let's actually, let me here you go. I've got it. So let's play it. So this is this is the entire thing. Let me well, there we go. Let's check this out.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right? Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me.
Yeah, that is somebody who just completely had their shut down.
He had their what?
I love you. Jada, I love you.
Their loop.
Yep. So yeah, he's laughing at this at first, and you can I think we've had that discussion before. Okay, he just told the joke. Look at his face right there. He literally just said the joke. Yeah, demonetization speedrun stream. Yeah, tell me about it. I mean, that's him right now. Now, if you look at her, she's pissed, and there was some other footage. Nate broke down some other footage of her looking at him really fucking pissed that he was laughing at the joke. But, yeah, I mean, take a look at that. So yeah, do you want to talk about that real quick, and then I had one other question I think I wanted to do, and then we'll probably wrap it up. It's nice to be airing again, even though we actually, yeah, it's I don't we'll talk about that later. But anyways, I don't know. So the OODA loop, I think you were saying, or how's that pronounced? We'd had this discussion before, but
OODA. It's observe, orient, decide, act, and it's a cycle that everybody goes in. You observe something, you have to orient to what's going on, then you have to make a decision, and then you have to act on that decision. And as long as things are moving as you expect, this functions perfectly fine. What happens is when you interrupt that system with something that's unexpected, it literally like shuts down your ability to process. And it takes you a while to you have to go through that OODA loop again. You have to then observe, orient, decide, and act again. So when you interrupt somebody's OODA loop, it'll shut them down for a period of time until they can reorient and go through that, work their way through that. And the more dramatic or surprising the out of place the action is that interrupts you, the longer it can take you to reorient. So it's one of the things that they work on is constantly going through scenarios like it's for like readiness, and they use it a lot in combat and battle type situations, to make sure that you're constantly going through that to look at possible disruptions to that so that you can get through that OODA loop a lot faster because you've already pre-thought through a lot of these things. So that's the only reason that it really kind of matters.
Yeah.
But that's a really good example of what happens when you interrupt it. Just that. I can't believe what just happened. It's like he's stuttering, trying to reorient as to what the hell just happened, and it's like I don't know what to do.
But notice, so he actually had some practice with what to do when you're stunned like that, which is he just repeated what happened, but did it in a way that's comedic. Just like Will Smith, just you can tell he's still processing and trying to figure out how what's the proper response here, and he's still trying to figure out. So what he just does is just for comedic effect and to play for time, just literally reiterates what just happened, knowing that even though he's not, he hasn't processed. Yeah, that's getting stuck on the.
And because he's got stuck on observe, and when that happens, is you tend to just repeat, and because he has a stage presence, and he realizes that he still needs, you don't want that dead space, and something unexpected happens, so he has experience with, unexpected things happening on stage, but that was so out of bounds of what you would expect to happen, that he literally got stuck on the observe, and the only thing he knows he has to keep going, has to keep saying something, but he's still stuck in the observe part because he can't quite process what just happened. So that's why you see him repeat what just happened, because it's a combination of things. The Zoodaloo being interrupted and trying to get his mind through that system again, along with the stage presence of I can't just stand here in shock. So that tends to happen when you're in a social setting and something drastic happens. You'll see many people will just repeat what just happened or ask what just happened.
Yep. There's a monkey for banana. I love this. This is why a special forces guy would throw in a rubber ducky instead of a flashbang when breaching a door, because everyone was expecting a flashbang, so a rubber ducky really threw them off. Yeah, I'll bet.
Staring at this rubber duck, going, "What the hell?" Bang, and I'm dead because I couldn't get over the what.
And you're talking to St. Peter at the pearly gates. So what happened? That's a really good question. I was looking at a rubber ducky. The next thing I know, oh dear Lord.
I was expecting a grenade, and here came this little rubber ducky, and
rubber ducky.
I was just fixated. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. I was like, "What's even going on anymore?"
Yeah, that was a nasty swagger he had there too. It's a sad situation, and I'm glad. I knew I wanted to talk about this, and I was curious. I'm glad that at least most of I think our live chat has been the WTF tactic. Yeah, most of our live chat I think seems to sort of be in agreement with that. It's shocking just the number of people who have been, and this is the other problem with it, of course, right? Which is it really does normalize the behavior, especially when you do this on national fucking television. This is one of my problems with Trump. When he starts talking about, oh, we're going to destroy cultural sites, which is a war crime. There's a reason it's a war crime, and he normalizes just talking about it. He normalizes making shit up. He normalizes lying. He normalizes stealing. He normalizes a whole bunch of behavior, and it's like the amount that our culture has to fucking walk that back to get back to where we were. And the number of people who have come out on Twitter who aren't trolling, they're just sitting there going like, well, this is what happens. And the people who've gotten really puffed out by this thing, sitting there saying, oh, well, that's what you get when you start talking smack to people. He's a fucking comedian who probably, there's a 50-50 as to whether he even knew. I guarantee you this, unless Will Smith had a conversation with him at some point, knows for a fact that Rock knew. Will Smith is just guessing that Rock was making fun of, I'd say, the medical condition as opposed to just the haircut, which maybe was because she was in a movie. That's what I'd have assumed. If I was Chris Rock, I'd have been sitting there going like, well, she probably cut the hair for a role. That's the thing. You take a look at, when you saw, and somebody pointed this out, when they saw, what's his name? Oh God, played Forrest Gump, Apollo 13, Mr. Rogers. Thank you. When you saw Tom Hanks, Tom Hanks Tom Hanks was talking once about what it was like when he was doing Castaway, because he didn't want to do prosthetic. He grew his hair out like that, and it's like, okay, people see him on the streets in Hollywood, and to some extent they're used to that kind of fucking thing because people are always walking around. It's like that's the fucking that's the business they're in. That's what they're doing. They're always looking weird or doing something weird because they're getting into roles. They're getting into and then you look into people who are getting so absorbed into the roles they're starting to act really. It's a crazy fucking town. So I don't blame Rock for just assuming she's looking that way for a role. She's an actress. She's at an awards ceremony, and her hair's been shaved. It's probably not the first time he's seen that. That's why he went to G.I. Jane. And then the response to just act like that. Anyways, it felt like an episode of The Twilight Zone because the number of people calling it out have been a lot smaller than the number of people, at least that I've seen, defending it. It was a little. Anyways, it was sad, and now that was my point. Is now people are sitting there, coming out saying, "Well, good for him," and good no, and now we gotta undo the social damage done by him doing that on television because it's not acceptable. So, yeah. All right, let's see. All right. Well, I think
rubber ducks. Apparently, Madison Cawthorn said that student loans shouldn't be forgiven, and to make sure students don't waste money, they should be barred from taking out federal student loans. Thoughts? Because I have a lot, and some of them aren't very popular about this topic.
I could guess at a thought of yours or two. I think federal student loans. Well, I can see you maybe making an argument for doing it at the state level, but not federally, and you may have a good point there. But I'll go with not trying to figure out any good points you may bring up because I've sort of learned where you go on most of these things. Loans in general, either basically at cost or at inflation, that are reasonably low are a net positive for society. Having a higher educated base is a positive for society, and if people want to go to college, I'd like to see everybody get the opportunity to go to college. The loans do need to be paid back, and they need to be paid back for any number of reasons, including but not limited to moral hazard. And you can't, if you could make college free for everybody, I think that would be preferable, but I don't think you take out a loan and then you forgive it. And the reason is because you don't want to set up this precedent that people think that that's an expectation you can get in life, and you set that up whether you mean to or not. We're human beings, repeat what they see, and we are very influenced by what we experience. And if you experience somebody forgiving a loan, you're going to sit there and say, well, really, that's the kind of behavior people should be thinking about doing more often in general, right? Yeah, you shouldn't be expecting that now. That's my thoughts. How about you? And then saying that, I'm going to interrupt you again and tell you more about my thoughts. So what I was thinking was... No, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. I'm going to get my ass in a sling on that one. Okay.
So all of the... this one's a difficult one. This is an example of how government tries to solve a problem and creates three more in the process. Before government was guaranteeing student loans, if you couldn't afford, didn't have the money to go to college, you had to try and get a privatized loan. And of course, the banks that you would generally go to cared about the return on investment as to whether you could actually pay your loan back. So they would take a look at what you wanted to get a loan to go to college for. In other words, looking at what you're going to major in. And they would take a look around at the economy around them and say, is there a demand for this kind of this line of work? And if the answer was no, they wouldn't give you the loan for it. They'd say, hey, we're willing to give you a loan to go be a petroleum engineer, but we're not going to give you a loan to be an underwater basket weaver. So there was a feedback loop between... Say again?
So is that a thing, underwater basket weaving? This wouldn't shock me, to be quite honest, but...
It's the stupid, maybe a sociology degree or whatever it is. So just as kind of the quote unquote useless degrees that there aren't very many jobs for. There's a reason I was originally going to go to college to be a wildlife biologist until I realized just how many unemployed wildlife biologists there were in the country, and thought, wow, I have a very small chance of actually getting a job in this field, so maybe I should, incur all of this debt to get a degree in this field. So that's used to be kind of how it is. The downside to that, so big plus side, we were kind of shuttling people into degree programs in areas that were needed in the actual economy. So they could get a job in their field a lot easier. And those areas where there weren't a lot of job opportunities, we kind of steered people away from them unless they had their own money to pay for it themselves. Big positive. Big negative, there were a lot of people that didn't get to go to college. And we could miss out on quite a lot of things because those people weren't given the chance, because for lots of various reasons, they weren't able to get jobs. And how do you know that person who doesn't major in sociology, that the bank says, hey, this isn't a particularly profitable field, so we're not going to loan you the money? How do you know that person doesn't come with some big breakthrough that's going to improve, human flourishing dramatically? You don't know that. So you have these positives and these negatives to the system we had before. When government got involved, it took away the feedback on what people should try and major in to be productive in the economy going forward. So that went away. So people were like, well, I can get a loan to pursue whatever it is I want to pursue, whether it's economically viable or not. So we end up with a lot of people that have degrees in fields that they can't get jobs in. And now they have a lot of debt to go to this school, plus the schools tend to raise tuition to whatever the government's going to match because it's free money. So it also causes an inflation of the costs of going to school. So you removed all of that, and it created a whole bunch of these other issues. So my whole take on it is you either decide, like you said, that a better educated population is better overall for the country. So we should care about education and educating our youth, and simply provide free college for people and just say, look, everybody can go to college, and not charge them for it. I mean, we would have to bear that cost. Society would need to bear that cost. So it needs to be important enough to general society that we're willing to pay the extra taxes to be able to afford something like that. Or the government should stay out of it. I think the problems that the government getting involved, much like the housing programs that ended up with that resulted in the subprime mortgage crisis that we had, it's the same kinds of things that are going on. We now have people that are trapped in debt, have degrees that they can't really reliably or realistically pay off that debt without causing a huge amount of burden and keeping them, essentially a boot to their necks to keep them down when they should be flourishing. So we need to make the decision whether we want to make college available to everyone and let those people who wish to pursue something at college pursue it, and have society bear the cost of that, or the government should get out of it and let the market decide what it's willing to lend money for what degrees.
And somebody it may have. I think it was Porpoise who had said that the universities need to stop price gouging, but I think that's one of the things that you pointed out is they learned they can raise the prices and still get students because those loans are now guaranteed, and they are creating new programs. In some cases, they're programs that are important and revolutionary and groundbreaking, but in other cases, they're also just creating new programs because they want programs that they know is going to attract people who who don't necessarily have to pay for it, or who are somehow offsetting the cost. So they're interested in attracting students. I'm trying to remember what was there was another sort of classic example of this where it was sort of the tail wagging the dog, but universities, instead of instead of it being about an education, it became about trying to find ways to get more students who could now afford it because of the government backing. Really finding ways to cater even to the irresponsibility of the student, knowing that they don't have to, because you've divorced the consumer from the from the burden of it. It's one reason why, and some people in this audience are going to assume I'm speaking about one lawsuit. I'm actually not. I'm speaking about one that I don't think anyone in this audience knows about. But there was a lawsuit recently that I saw where the person who was paying for the suit, the person wasn't paying for the suit. The lawyer was doing it pro bono, and I always get very concerned with those kinds of lawsuits because, then the question is, what's the actual motive for the attorney, and what is the motive for the plaintiff to settle? What's the motive to try to reach an equitable arrangement, or instead of just trying to bleed the other side dry? It turns the system on its head. And while it would be great if we do have a system right now where people who have the most money, the odds are in their favor. Absolutely, that's a problem. I don't know exactly how you solve that problem, but I don't think having one side that's working for free and the other side that isn't, you can't divorce, because it's moral hazard. You talk about that a lot, and I think that's a subject that we need to talk about more, is what happens when you divorce people from the consequences of their actions, including having to pay for it. And I don't think that that's like a huge travesty, but I think that's actually part of the reason why prices are going up, is because the universities now have an unlimited tap, and it's not the students, it's the government. The students is just the intermediary. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, and I personally kind of think that we as a society should value education, especially in STEM fields, enough that we should send our children to at least associate's degree level of college. Not only that, but your prefrontal cortex doesn't finish developing until about 25-ish. So having students being able to take more nuanced courses and things like psychology and sociology and things like that at a slightly later age is a benefit to society. I think that we should, that's one of the things I think we should as a country come together and support. If you want to go into like specialization, you want to get master's or doctorate or something like that, then I think that you should bear the cost of that. And, I would like to see the government not be involved in that at all, not guaranteeing these loans. There is a downside to that, and I recognize there's a downside to that. There's going to be people who are unfairly not allowed to pursue, more specialized training because they're not, for whatever reason, they're disadvantaged enough that they're not going to realistically get the loan. And that's the reality of the situation. I think that we should strive to change that so that we're giving these loans based off the merit of their performance thus far. I mean, remember, if we're giving free education up to at least associate's degree level, they've got quite a track record to take a look at how they perform academically, and then allowing them to look at the career field that they're choosing to specialize in. Those are the kinds of things I think that should go into the decision making as to whether they would actually get a loan or not anything else. And I think that would be the best way to go about it.
So Wynn asks, and I think this is important because we often bring this up, wasn't deregulation what caused the banking crisis? There's a lot of things that caused the banking crisis, and there's no easy way to settle on any one. One of the ones, and you can pick one, actually. This is one of the problems when you start looking at how causality actually works. It's, we tend to, you take a look at how many straws does it take to break a camel's back? Oh, we got this echo again. I don't know what that... we may need to just wrap this up. Did something change on one of the mics? I have no idea why we're getting an echo. I wonder if it's
It's probably me again.
Maybe. I'll try to get this, just do nothing but testing tomorrow and figure out what the cause of that issue is. So, when you talk about causality, we tend to look at the most proximate cause as what, quote, caused something. But realistically speaking, that has no more or less cause than any number of an infinite causes that go back. The Giuseppe Zangaya could easily be said to have helped the U.S. win World War II. Without him, would have lost World War II. What did he do? He assassinated the mayor of Chicago. That's not actually what won us World War II. What won us World War II was that he missed President Roosevelt, President-elect at the time, President-elect Roosevelt, who is the person he was aiming at. He was on a chair that was uneven, and the chair was wobbly, and he missed and hit the wrong guy. Now, if he had hit Roosevelt, Roosevelt's VP was against the New Deal, and the New Deal would never have passed. The U.S. would not have ostensibly been able to recover from the Great Depression. And we would not have recovered from the attack on Pearl Harbor, would have entered the war late, and the UK would have been crushed by Germany by that time and would have lost. And that's actually sort of roughly the whole premise of Man in the High Tower by, I think it was Philip Dick, his sci-fi novel. At any rate, so, okay, and, you can play with causality in any sorts of ways. One of the interesting causes that I think is credible for one of the causes of the housing crisis was Bill Clinton saying, we're going to get every American into a home. We want every American to have a home. That's great. That is laudable. Thank God, for people who think like that. Problem is, you have to be extremely careful even with high ideals, because the economics is not actually it's interesting, and it's very hard to actually predict what's going to happen when you put your hand on the scales, except something's going to happen. Something is going to happen. And what he did was he was one of a number of people, and we're also a Republican, I think it was Bush aided this along with the intent of helping people get homes. And what they did was they lowered the lending standards so that even if you didn't have sufficient credit, even if that's why actually is entering. This is a great reason, because it turned so students have become a commodity. Students have become a commodity. That's what I was trying to say earlier with the university. Students have become a commodity because it's not the students who are paying; it's the government. The government's got it back, and this is what happened with the housing market, which was that the commodity was no longer the houses. It was the people buying the houses because the government was backing it. And the lending standards had dropped so low that, and it was lower than the economy would naturally permit. The housing market would not accept housing standards that low. And what Clinton said was, we're going to lower them. We're going to artificially lower them, and this will be universally good because it means anybody can get a home. Well, that ended up having massive implications to a little more than 20 years down the line as a direct result of saying, I don't like what the market's doing naturally. I'm going to put my hand on the scales and say, we're going to put everybody in a home. Turns out that can have some unintended consequences, and people took advantage of it in ways that nobody anticipated. But now you took the home buyers into commodities, and that's what the CDOs was the repackaging of their debt. Which was unstable as hell because the market couldn't actually afford what Clinton had proposed. And there were economists who told him that, and he was just like, oh, no, you're full of it. We're the U.S. We'll find a way to fix it. We didn't. So you have to be really careful. I am. And I think as Andrew and I, hopefully not putting words in your mouth, you and I think, fundamentally agree that the government has to be really careful when fiddling with stuff like that. I tend to be the bleeding heart and lean more towards, okay, give it a shot. But the reality is it causes things like the housing market crash. And there were economists who predicted that, and that kind of thing is what happens when you mess with the market like that. So as Andrew's not off base when he sits there and has those concerns about the universities. I think that's a fair point, because now universities are changing their curriculum to shop for students because the students can afford it now. It's also what causes the standards to lower for university acceptance and prices to go up, which is what you see happening. I don't know. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, I mean that's what governments often decide on things. I'm not so much in the whole, the government is wholly evil. I think that there's genuinely people that want to help, and they let their hearts get a little bit ahead of their heads. I would be a lot more willing to take a look at many of the more progressive or left-leaning policies and say, hey, you think you have the answer. I don't think this will work, but you think it'll work, and you've got enough people, then let's give it a try, so provided you're willing to watch the data as it comes in. And as soon as we start seeing the trend that this is causing problems in other places, you're willing to pivot and say, okay, this didn't work. We need to do something different. Stop getting so wedded to this idea. A lot of times it's like, no, it will work. It'll work. And it's like, okay, well, we have some pretty good evidence that it's not working and it's causing some other issues here. We need to change. And of course, by then it's too late. Now it's a government program. And they say the closest thing to immortality is a government program. It's a bit of a hyperbole.
Yeah, a bit, but yeah, not much. Yeah.
These systems have become so vastly complicated that it's really, really difficult to, even with the best of intentions, and you're really trying hard, it's really hard to see a lot of the unintended consequences that may arise from this. So the markets are very, very good. Free and open markets are very, very good at streamlining and efficiency and productivity, etc. They're not good, and they're not even designed, nor do they even address compassion. There are people that are going to get left behind, and the markets don't give a crap. They care about efficiency and productivity. There's no mechanism in there to care about human beings. So that's where people come in, and that's where we have things like governments, and we try and introduce that compassion. And we have to be careful when we do it, because compassion can kill. Compassion can hurt people if you're not doing it right.
Well, that's my point about the sweatshops.
Overly compassionate.
That was my point about the sweatshops. Exactly. That woman who closed the sweatshops, she's like, there's Christian heart bleeding into her boots, and we closed the sweatshops that was using slave labor. Yes, they were using slave labor. Not quite, actually. No, they weren't. I mean, it was a sweatshop, so the children were working there. But what she didn't realize was they wanted to work there, and not that they wanted to work there in an overarching sense. I mean, I'm sure that if much preferred a job where, if you were cut and injured and bleeding, you didn't have to keep working. But they had to keep working because if they left, another child would fill their space. There were machine guns there, but the machine guns were to keep children out, not to keep the ones that were there in. A common misconception, but the reason was because at that point 1 in 5 people in China was starving to death. The reason they had sweatshops was because they could get away with it because their economy was so fucked up. You want to fix the sweatshops, free trade with China. Yes, our economy takes a hit, but their economy goes up, and then they start employing more people, and then they start competing for labor instead of the labor competing for jobs. You close a sweatshop, she killed kids. She killed kids. And I remember seeing her on CNN or something crying, we closed the sweatshop, so now these kids don't have to work. Did you actually ask the kids if they wanted it to close? By her standards, living in a comfortable, industrialized, first world nation, yeah, sure, it sucked ass. They were going there by choice, and the reason was it was that or starve to death, and she took that option away from them. And she's like, oh, well, I was doing a kind thing. Kindness isn't doing what you think is right. It's asking them what they need and then trying to help them get that. If that ends up, being if it's an alcoholic, you don't want to do that either. It's so much more fucking complicated and nuanced. Anyways, I'm sorry. You were saying, oh, let's wrap it up, but I'd love to have you finish that off. But that sweatshops example is, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you get we have a very difficult time because if you just decide, okay, well, we're just going to let the market decide. I mean, this is the point of Keynesian economics, because the markets have no capacity to care or have compassion about other human beings. If you're not productive and you're not efficient at what you do, you're not. And when I say productive, I'm not just meaning, spending money into the economy. I mean, you're producing something of value to the community, to the country that you're in. And that's kind of a pivotal point to economics. Is you kind of need to be able to provide. You need to provide, worth to the economy around you, or you become a drag on the society around you. Markets don't care about whether you're downtrodden, whether you don't have the resources to try and get going in life. It doesn't care about any of those things. So we need people to have that kind of compassion, and they need to consider very carefully, because these are especially today, these are very, very complex systems that have so many variables that there isn't a single person out there that can predict enough to not make mistakes or to not have unintended consequences, to come up with the actual correct way of doing things. And we may have to try several different things, but we need to be, what is the word I'm looking for, flexible enough to recognize when something's not working out well and to change what we're doing. And we sometimes lose that because, especially when you're trying to do things at the federal level, it can take a while to try and get something in. So, that's why I prefer to have the solutions, as local as possible, because, your local government can turn on a dime. The federal government can't. And, what works in one area may not work in another area. So being able to try several different solutions at once is also of benefit, which is kind of the whole idea of why we had state governments to begin with and why they were allowed so much autonomy. We're going to have all of these states. We're going to do all of these different solutions to living life and trying to self-govern, and we'd be able to see, what kind of works and what doesn't. And I understand the drive to want to get things done on a federal level, because who wants to fight 50 battles for something like, having legalized abortion? I understand that, but I think that we need to resist that kind of thing, and we should try and keep things as local. I mean, when it comes to actual protecting of human rights, then, that should be a federal issue. I mean, the federal government is specifically there to guarantee the rights of its citizens. At least our government was formed to do that. So it's very difficult. It's very hard. These are immensely complicated, and I don't think even teams of people can foresee the effect of putting their hands on the scale sometimes. But we need to recognize when that's happened and when we're getting a lot of horrible side effects or unintended consequences that are causing more and more problems, because there absolutely are people out there with degrees that are thousands of dollars in debt that, they're being crippled by the debt that they owe. They don't have much of a hope of actually paying it off, because, the field that they have a degree in won't support the number of people with that degree. So it's like you can't just ignore the market when it comes to trying to get a degree. At least not if you're going to have government-backed loans to guarantee it. There has to be something that pressures people into areas that are needed and tries to drive people away from areas that aren't particularly needed. This doubles in the fact that, if you are super passionate about something and, you're willing to do all that extra work and say, hey, look, this isn't particularly economically viable, but I am so passionate about it that I'm going to be the best damn person in this field, which means you're actually going to be one of the people that gets a job in that field. And that field will be better for your passion in that field. But it's kind of like the point that Mike Rowe makes about going to college. It's like, okay, fine. You want to go and, you're really passionate about, say, being a zoologist. There aren't that many positions available for zoology majors. There just really aren't. But if you're that passionate that you recognize that you're going to have to work twice as hard as everybody else, or veterinary medicine is another example of this, you're going to have to work twice as hard as everybody else just so that you can make sure that you can be employed in that field. And if you're willing to do that, those are the kinds of people we need in those fields. And if you're not willing to work that hard, to be the absolute best, to sacrifice pretty much everything else so that you can be the best in that field, well, then maybe you should go into something that's more economically viable, has a lot more demand for that, because then you can just put in the modicum amount of work and you're going to be successful. So yeah, there's huge problem, and we've trapped a bunch of people into loans that they're having a very difficult time trying to pay back, right at the cusp of them trying to start their lives. I mean, the one good thing about this is they generally have their whole lives in front of them to get this figured out, and they're able, far more resilient to setbacks. They have time to fix things, have time to figure things out. But I don't think what we're doing is a particularly great idea, and I think that we should change it.
Well, and there's a flip side to that.
Associate's degrees.
There's a flip side to that too, which is we even liberals often will acknowledge it on the other side of that exact same coin, which is they'll say we need to pay teachers more, and we need to attract more people into the field of teaching so that we can afford to select the best teachers. Well, that necessarily implies that the economic factor is going to change the makeup of the people that are applying to the jobs. Some of them, and it's not an either or. The reality is, you can get, and we say the same thing with police. I think most people I know would say, well, we should pay police more, but we also do need to expect more of them. But the idea is that by paying people more people are going to want to be police. And the reason is there are people who want to be police officers, but they also want to be X, Y, and Z. And very few people know exactly what they want to be and are going to be unwavering from that. But if one job pays a lot more than the other, you're going to attract more people into that job. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I think that's how you get more qualified people in certain jobs. All right, listen, I think it's about time to wrap it up. It's almost been about 2 hours, which is good, and I enjoy the chance to hang. But I am wiped, and there's going to be a lot of work we need to get done. I'm going to need to get done. I'll show everyone a picture of the back end. But yeah, there's a lot there, and tomorrow it's going to be overtime. I'm going to be doing a rundown. Like I said, I actually got a bit of a rundown yesterday, which was nice. It's been a little while. And then Thursday, we will have an After Dark. So I hope you'll be joining us for that. And people can come in, yell at you for just being you. And but also I think a lot of people really do want to talk about what's been going on in Ukraine. And I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic, but it's still an absolute horror over there, and the entire situation is I don't know if we're trying to follow the poisoning of the negotiating teams on both sides, both the Russians and the Ukrainians it looks like they were poisoned. They suffered the symptoms of poisoning, both sides, and it certainly wasn't the flu, and it happened only to the negotiators. So it looks like they were poisoned. They're alive, but the head investigator said, yeah, they're alive by choice. It was a warning. So we'll see. At any rate, we'll catch up on this. If you go into our Discord, you'll see, in fact, you can actually sort of help set what the show is going to be about. Put in, information for us to access, and we curate the information there, discuss what we're going to be talking about in future episodes. So I hope you'll join us on the Discord. That notwithstanding, too, it's a great way to keep up on the off chance that we get struck again and are down for a few days. So apologies for that. That was a interesting circumstance. It's unfortunate, but we'll work on trying to make sure that does not happen again. Any final thoughts, Andring?
Porpoise said that she personally thinks that you all should pay for me to go back to college. And the only thing I can say is that would probably be an inefficient use of resources.
Well, listen, I'm putting forth as much money as I can to get you to college. I'm doing my best. You're getting your 15 rubles every day that you air, and That's what, like .007 in perpetuity. You got it. Oh, dear Lord. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow for Overtime, the Rundown, and then on a Thursday at 10 p.m. for After Dark. Thanks all for coming back. Sorry we were gone for so long, and with any luck, knock on. You're supposed to knock on your own head, I guess, but knock on wood. We'll not get struck like that again. Oh, dear Lord. Famous last words. Have a good evening, all, and we will see you tomorrow.